1952. Larry Mann, first Cup driver death. In 1952, at Pennsylvania's notoriously perilous Langhorne Speedway, Larry Mann became the first driver to die during a NASCAR Cup Series race. Mann was piloting his green Hudson Hornet, a car he nicknamed the Green Hornet, when, on lap 211 of the 250-mile event, he lost control on the dirt oval's treacherous surface. The car smashed through a guardrail, flipped multiple times, and came to a rest against a tree outside the track. Mann succumbed to his injuries, massive head trauma, and a pulmonary hemorrhage shortly after. His tragic death, the first in NASCAR's top division, cast a somber spotlight on the dangers of early stock car racing and underscored the need for better safety measures even in the sport's infancy. 1953. Black Saturday. 2 drivers killed at Raleigh Speedway on a humid night of September 19, 1953. NASCAR fans at Raleigh Speedway witnessed a nightmare. Shortly after the green flag waved for a 250-lap modified sportsman's race, driver Bill Blevins' car stalled on the backstretch. As cars swerved to avoid him, 18-year-old Jesse Midkiff barreled into Blevins' stopped vehicle at nearly 90 miles per hour. The impact ignited a massive fireball, sending flames 70 feet into the sky. Chaos engulfed the track as crews scrambled to douse the inferno. When the smoke cleared, both Blevins and Midkiff lay fatally injured in the twisted wreckage. Dozens of other cars were damaged in the 15-car pileup, though no other drivers were seriously hurt. Spectators and racers alike were horrified. The tragedy quickly earned the ominous moniker Black Saturday, symbolizing one of NASCAR's earliest dark days. In a grim decision that would be unthinkable today, officials eventually restarted the race after clearing the debris, and Buddy Schumann went on to claim a hollow victory. But the celebratory mood was extinguished. As drivers quietly loaded up to leave, NASCAR's young sanctioning body faced tough questions about safety. This was the first time multiple drivers had been killed in the same NASCAR event, and it shook the sport to its core. 1960. Pit crew tragedy at the Southern 500, Darlington. The 1960 Southern 500 is remembered as one of the deadliest races in NASCAR history. On lap 95 of the Labor Day Classic, leading driver Bobby Johns tangled with Roy Tyner coming off of turn 4. Their bumpers locked, and in a split second, both cars skidded out of control directly onto pit road, which at that time had no wall separating it from the racing surface. Johns' car careened into the crowded pit area at full speed. With a sickening crash, his Chevy demolished a wooden trackside observation stand and then plowed into a group of crew members servicing Joe Lee Johnson's car. The impact was devastating. Johnson's chief mechanic Paul McDuffie and crewman Charles Sweatland were struck and killed instantly, as was NASCAR official Joe Taylor, who had been standing by the pit wall. 3 other mechanics were badly injured, and even a spectator suffered wounds from flying debris. A stunned silence fell over the grandstands as rescue workers rushed in. Johns miraculously climbed from his wrecked car, but the damage was done. Incredibly, and in keeping with the era's norms, officials did not stop the race. Even as the victims were tended to, the remaining drivers raced on, unaware of the full scope of the disaster unfolding in the pits. Buck Baker eventually limped home as the winner, but victory felt trivial on this grim afternoon. 1961. Curtis Turner and the Union Ban, NASCAR's labor war. In 1961, NASCAR was shaken by a rebellion that nearly tore the sport apart. Curtis Turner, nicknamed the Blonde Blizzard for his fearless driving, led an effort to unionize stock car racers under the Teamsters Federation of Professional Athletes. Drivers were frustrated by low prize money and the lack of medical coverage for injuries. Turner had found an ally in Teamsters boss Jimmy Hoffa, who offered financial support to bail out the struggling Charlotte Motor Speedway. On one condition: Turner had to organize a drivers' union. 2-time champion Tim Flock joined Turner's cause, but the idea of collective bargaining enraged NASCAR founder Bill France Sr. France had built the sport through strict control, and he saw unions as a mortal threat to his authority. His response was ruthless. By mid-1961, France banned both Turner and Flock for life, blacklisting 2 of NASCAR's biggest stars overnight. The move sent shockwaves through the garage. Even fan favorite Fireball Roberts, who initially showed support, quickly backed away after being briefly sidelined himself. France had made his stance clear. Any hint of union activity would be crushed. Turner, a race winner just weeks earlier, was suddenly exiled, forced to compete in outlaw events on dusty dirt tracks. Persona non grata at NASCAR speedways. 1963, Wendell Scott's overdue victory and racism in NASCAR. On a dusty Florida afternoon in 1963, Wendell Scott made history as the first black driver to win a race in NASCAR's top division. However, the triumph came with injustice. Scott, an independent from Virginia, drove the race of his life in the 200-lap feature at Jacksonville. In his blue number 34 Chevy, he lapped the field twice and was the clear winner. But in a shocking twist, officials declared Buck Baker the victor and guided him to victory lane. Scott was left on the sidelines, denied the spotlight. Allegedly, organizers were unwilling to see a black man celebrated on stage, where tradition included kissing a white trophy queen in front of a segregated Southern crowd. The decision cut deep, leaving Scott and his team devastated. Hours later, after the crowd had gone home, NASCAR quietly admitted a scoring error and amended the results, naming Scott the winner by 2 laps. He got the prize money, but no trophy, robbed of the immediate celebration that every driver dreams of. His grandson would later call it one of the greatest atrocities in sports history. For years, Scott's only Cup victory carried no trophy, no fanfare, just another reminder of the racism he fought every time that he raced. He often faced taunting, was barred from certain track restaurants and hotels, and even survived death threats. Despite all of this, Scott persevered on shoestring budgets, logging 20 top 5 finishes over 13 seasons. 1964, Joe Weatherly's fatal crash at Riverside. Just weeks into the 1964 season, tragedy struck NASCAR with the loss of Joe Weatherly, one of its reigning champions. Little Joe Weatherly was as jovial off-track as he was fearless behind the wheel. A 2-time defending Cup Series champion riding a wave of success. But during the Motor Trend 500 at Riverside, his number 8 Mercury sailed off course in turn 6. In an era before window nets or full harnesses, the 41-year-old's head whipped outside the driver's window as the car smashed into a concrete wall. The impact was fatal. Weatherly died instantly from massive head injuries. Shock rippled through the garage. The sport's colorful clown prince of racing was gone. Grim details emerged. Weatherly hadn't been wearing a shoulder harness and, like most drivers back then, had no window net. Ironically, he'd been wary of those very safety devices, fearing he'd be trapped in a fire. Those choices proved fateful. His death marked the first time a sitting NASCAR champion was killed during a season, casting a heavy pall over 1964. Drivers pressed on with heavy hearts, while close friend Richard Petty openly mourned. Fans were forced to confront a sobering truth. Even the sport's brightest stars weren't immune to its dangers. 1964. Fireball Roberts' fiery end spurs safety reforms. Glenn Fireball Roberts was a superstar of NASCAR's earlier years, charismatic, fast, and immensely popular. Tragically, his final moments came in an inferno that would change the sport forever. During the World 600 at Charlotte, on lap 7, Roberts' Ford swerved while avoiding a wreck between Ned Jarrett and Junior Johnson. His car spun backwards into the inside wall, flipped, and immediately burst into flames. The sight was horrifying. A ball of fire consuming the overturned car. Jarrett stopped his own car and sprinted to the wreck. From inside, he heard Roberts scream, "Ned, help me!" By the time Jarrett and safety crews pulled him out, Roberts had suffered third-degree burns over more than 80% of his body. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, clinging to life. For weeks, the racing world held its breath. Roberts, just 35, and the 1962 Daytona 500 champion, fought bravely in a Charlotte ICU. At first, there was hope, but on June 30th, he took a grave turn, developing pneumonia and sepsis from his injuries. On July 2nd, 1964, Glenn Fireball Roberts succumbed. NASCAR had lost one of its brightest stars, and the garage was left in heartbreak and shock. 1965. The Hemi boycott and Petty's drag racing tragedy. In 1965, NASCAR was rocked by an off-track power struggle centered on the fearsome 426 Hemi engine, Chrysler's monster that had dominated the 1964 season. Concerned about a looming arms race in technology, NASCAR President Bill France Sr. declared the Hemi ineligible, arguing that it wasn't widely available in production cars. Chrysler's response was immediate. They pulled out of NASCAR entirely, cutting factory support and sidelining their biggest stars. That included reigning Daytona 500 champion Richard Petty, just 27 and at the height of his prime. Left without a ride, Petty made a surprising pivot to drag racing. He campaigned a supercharged Plymouth Barracuda nicknamed Outlawed, a pointed jab at NASCAR's Hemi ban. But the move soon turned tragic. On February 28, 1965, at a drag strip in Dallas, Georgia, Petty's Barracuda suffered a stuck throttle or suspension failure. The car vaulted off the strip, over an embankment, and into a crowd of spectators. Dozens were injured. An 8-year-old boy, Wayne Dye, was killed instantly. Petty escaped with only minor injuries, but he was devastated. The boy's death reminded him of his own children, and the emotional weight was crushing. That day, Richard Petty walked away from drag racing for good. 1965. Billy Wade killed in Daytona tire test. Fresh off of winning 4 consecutive NASCAR races in July 1964, 34-year-old Billy Wade was conducting a routine tire test at Daytona in January 1965 when disaster struck. A tire blowout at high speed sent Wade's car hard into the wall in the track's west turn and inflicted fatal injuries. The reigning 1963 Rookie of the Year's sudden death, occurring outside of an actual race, hammered home that the danger didn't stop when the green flag did. In Wade's case, the tragedy prompted change. Goodyear soon developed an inner liner safety system to keep tires inflated during blowouts, a direct response aimed at preventing the kind of catastrophic failure that killed Wade. His passing was a grim reminder that even test sessions at Daytona's high banks carried lethal risks, claiming a rising star who had only months before been in victory lane. 1969. Talladega 500 boycott. Drivers versus NASCAR. NASCAR's bold dream for the fastest track in the world imploded in 1969, triggering an unprecedented mutiny. The brand new Alabama International Motor Speedway, later known as Talladega, was set to host its first 500-mile showcase, but from the start, the track proved treacherous. In practice and tire tests, drivers suffered alarming blowouts at speeds topping 200 miles per hour. The rough asphalt and untested banking shredded rubber after only a handful of laps. Concerned for their safety, members of the Professional Drivers Association, led by Richard Petty, demanded NASCAR postpone the race until safer tires could be delivered. But NASCAR founder Bill France Sr. flatly refused. The standoff exploded during a heated drivers' meeting on race eve. France reportedly mocked the group as cowards, and tempers boiled so high that Leroy Yarborough punched France in the face. By Sunday, the stars were gone. Petty, Pearson, the Allisons, Yarborough, Wendell Scott, and nearly every major name packed up and left Talladega. Fans expecting a clash of giants instead watched chaos unfold. Desperate to keep the event alive, France cobbled together a field of minor league Grand American drivers and a handful of locals. Incredibly, Richard Brickhouse, one of the few Cup regulars who stayed, took the checkered flag in a bizarre race filled with underpowered cars and unfamiliar names. The fallout was swift. France retaliated by disbanding the PDA, crushing the drivers' union effort and cementing his iron grip over the sport. 1973. Larry Smith fatal Talladega crash. In the 1973 Talladega 500, 1972 Cup Rookie of the Year Larry Smith lost his life in a seemingly innocuous accident that jolted NASCAR. Just 14 laps into the race, Smith's number 92 blew a tire, and he lightly brushed the turn 1 wall. The impact appeared minor. Even broadcaster Ken Squire noted it didn't look that bad. And yet, Smith was pronounced dead moments later from massive head injuries, a basilar skull fracture, The shocking fatality underscored how the high-speed Talladega oval could claim anyone, rookie or veteran, and it spurred questions about safety equipment and superspeedway dangers. Smith's helmet was intact, fueling debate over whether removed padding or an abnormally soft skull contributed to the tragedy. 1975. Tiny Lund's death at Talladega. Dwayne "Tiny" Lund, a popular giant of a man and 1963 Daytona 500 champion, met a heartbreaking end in 1975 during a race at Talladega, often noted by fans as an ARCA or Grand National event on the Cup weekend. On August 17, 1975, Lund was involved in a violent six-car crash in the Talladega 500 that proved fatal. His car made contact with another and was then T-boned at high speed. Rescuers had pulled Lund from the wreck, and he was reportedly still alive upon extraction, but he succumbed to massive chest and internal injuries within minutes at the infield hospital. Lund's death was a huge blow for the NASCAR community. He was a hero who had once saved a fellow driver from a fiery crash. His passing underscored the ever-present peril of racing on Talladega's high-banked high-speed oval. 1975. Pit road explosion kills Randy Owens at Talladega. The 1975 Winston 500 delivered tragedy not on the track, but in the pits, a chilling reminder of the dangers faced by crew members. Randy Owens was just 20 years old, a young pit crewman for his brother-in-law, Richard Petty. His job that day was to operate a 100-pound pressurized water tank, a tool that teams used to cool overheated engines during pit stops. On lap 140, Petty's Dodge came in with a front wheel bearing on fire. Owens leaned over the tank to activate it, and in an instant, disaster struck. The tank exploded without warning, the blast echoing throughout the speedway. Owens was thrown at least 15 feet into the air, the force crushing his chest and heart on impact. Crew members nearby were knocked to the ground as Petty's pit erupted in chaos. Despite frantic efforts, Owens died instantly. The race itself no longer mattered. Petty, who had climbed from his car only moments before the blast, was shaken and distraught. His team withdrew immediately, leaving behind points and prize money. "I had just gotten out. Then it happened," Petty later recalled, his voice trembling. In the garage, silence replaced the roar of engines. Randy Owens, the polite kid from Level Cross who had grown up around the Petty clan, was gone. He left behind a wife, 2 young children, and a grieving NASCAR family who mourned one of their own. 1976. DiGard's mystery motor cheating scandal. Cheating has always been a part of NASCAR's lore, but rarely was it as brazen or as dramatic as at the 1976 Daytona 500. In qualifying for the sport's biggest race, 2 top teams got busted in an audacious scheme. Darrell Waltrip's DiGard Racing Chevrolet and A.J. Foyt's car were found to have hidden nitrous oxide systems to boost their engines. By injecting the laughing gas into the intake, they would run faster laps than legal. NASCAR officials, suspicious when Waltrip and Foyt suddenly slowed in practice compared to qualifying, tore the cars apart and discovered the mystery Go Fast devices. Both drivers' qualifying times were disallowed, igniting a firestorm of controversy. Foyt furiously denied any wrongdoing, nearly coming to blows with NASCAR's president. But Waltrip eventually admitted the caper with a cheeky grin. "If you don't cheat, you look like an idiot. If you do it and get caught, you look like a dope," Waltrip quipped, placing himself in the latter category. The 1976 nitrous scandal was early proof of systematic rule-bending in NASCAR's garage, and it remains one of the sport's most legendary cheating tales. 1979. Daytona 500 fistfight on live TV. One of NASCAR's most infamous on-track incidents didn't involve a wreck so much as a rumble. In the 1979 Daytona 500, the very first NASCAR race broadcast live, flag to flag on national TV, a last-lap collision for the win between Cale Yarborough and Davey Allison erupted into a fistfight in the infield. As millions of stunned viewers looked on, Yarborough and Allison began swinging helmets and punches, soon joined in by Donnie's brother Bobby Allison in the brawl. CBS announcer Ken Squire captured the moment with the now-famous call, "And there's a fight," his tone equal parts surprise and excitement. The spectacle of 2 drivers duking it out on the Daytona asphalt shocked America. But it also immensely boosted NASCAR's publicity. The Bad Day at Daytona brawl became a defining, if darkly comic moment in NASCAR lore. What could have been a disgrace was embraced by many as legendary theater. It put NASCAR on the map for new fans, albeit for an outrageous reason. 1983. The King caught cheating. Petty's illegal engine scandal. In the fall of 1983, NASCAR fans witnessed the unthinkable. Richard Petty, the sport's beloved icon, caught in a cheating scandal that shook stock car racing to its core. It all unfolded at the Miller High Life 500 in Charlotte, where Petty claimed what was then his 198th career victory. The win sent the crowd into a frenzy. Their hero was inching closer to the magic mark of 200, but the celebration quickly turned to controversy. During post-race inspection, officials found Petty's Pontiac carried a massive infraction: an oversized 381 cubic inch engine, far above NASCAR's 358 limit. To make matters worse, his crew had also mounted the wrong tires, a softer left-sided rubber placed on the right side for extra grip. The King had been caught breaking the rules on two fronts. NASCAR's response was swift. Petty was fined a record $35,000 and docked 104 championship points, one of the harshest penalties in series history. His crew chief and brother, Maurice Petty, bore the humiliation of building the illegal motor. Yet, in a controversial decision, officials allowed Richard to keep the victory. At the time, NASCAR didn't strip wins after inspection. The backlash was fierce. Rival teams and the media argued the win should have been erased. 1 week later, NASCAR changed its policy. From then on, major violations could mean disqualification. The scandal left a lasting scar. For fans, it was jarring to see their hero, the King, forever tied to what became known as King Richard's big engine. 1987. Bobby Allison's airborne crash at Talladega leads to change. A sunny spring afternoon at Talladega turned terrifying on lap 22 of the Winston 500, in a moment that forever changed NASCAR's outlook on speed. Veteran driver Bobby Allison was charging down the front stretch at over 200 miles per hour when debris sliced his rear tire. In an instant, his number 22 Buick snapped sideways and, like a nightmare, lifted off the ground. The car slammed into the catch fence, nearly vertical, spinning like a top, while shredding more than 100 feet of steel barrier in front of packed grandstands. Spectators screamed and ducked as debris sprayed into the crowd. Dozens were struck by flying car parts, yet, by sheer luck, no one was killed. Several fans were treated for minor injuries as the battered fence just barely held. Allison's car, mangled beyond recognition, came to rest back on the track in a shower of twisted metal. Silence gripped the speedway. Then, cheers of relief erupted when Bobby Allison climbed out, virtually uninjured. But the near disaster left NASCAR officials and team owners pale-faced. They had narrowly avoided catastrophe. Allison later admitted he felt his car trying to fly and held on for dear life. That same weekend, Bill Elliott's qualifying run topped 212 miles per hour. Combined with Allison's terrifying crash, it became the final straw. NASCAR's cars had simply grown too fast for its biggest tracks. 1987 to 1988. Tim Richmond's downfall. AIDS, secrecy, and suspension. Tim Richmond's story is one of brilliance, tragedy, and stigma. In the mid-1980s, he was NASCAR's flamboyant superstar, movie star handsome, brash, and blisteringly fast. In 1986, Richmond won 7 races and seemed destined for greatness. But the following year, rumors swirled when he abruptly withdrew from competition. Privately, Richmond had been diagnosed with AIDS, a dreaded little understood disease at the time. Fearing the stigma and uncertain of his future, he kept his condition hidden from NASCAR and even most friends. In the summer of 1987, he staged a brief triumphant comeback, winning 2 races. But by the fall, his health declined again, and he stepped away indefinitely, officially citing double pneumonia. Things turned worse in early 1988. NASCAR introduced a new drug testing policy and demanded Richmond take a test before the Daytona 500. The results came back positive for banned substances, reportedly trace amounts of amphetamines and opioids. NASCAR suspended him immediately, just days before the race. Richmond denied drug use insisting his AIDS medication caused a false positive. He sued for defamation and breach of contract, igniting a bitter legal battle. As the fight played out, NASCAR's doctor described him as a very sick young man who shouldn't be racing. Richmond felt betrayed and scapegoated. He would never return to the track. On August 13, 1989, Tim Richmond died of AIDS complications at just 34 years old, alone at his Florida home. 1989. Grant Adcox's fatal crash overshadows a championship finale. The 1989 NASCAR Cup season finale at Atlanta was supposed to be a day of celebration. Instead, it was marred by a fatal wreck that reminded everyone of racing's cruel side. Grant Adcox, a 39-year-old independent driver from Tennessee, was a journeyman who had scraped together a ride for the Atlanta Journal 500. On lap 202, Adcox's number 41 Chevrolet blew a tire as it barreled into the high-speed turn 3. The car never slowed. It slammed nearly head-on into the concrete wall at full tilt, exploding in a shower of debris. The impact was so violent that rescue workers knew it was grave. Adcox suffered catastrophic internal injuries and was extricated in critical condition. Within hours, news came that Grant Adcox had died at a nearby hospital, despite every effort to save him. The timing could not have been worse. This was the very race where Richard Petty was making his final start after a 35-year career, and where Rusty Wallace would edge Dale Earnhardt for the season championship. But Adcox's death cast a somber pall over what should have been a festival. As Petty took a ceremonial last lap and Wallace celebrated his title, many in the garage were quietly thinking of Grant. Adcox was not a household name. He'd never won a Cup race, but he was respected as a hard worker and beloved for his friendly demeanor. In fact, this was his second brush with tragedy. His father, team owner Herb Adcox, had died of a heart attack at the track a year earlier. Now, son Grant had lost his life at the very same venue. 1990. Atlanta Pit Road Catastrophe. Mike Rich's death spurs reforms. The 1990 season ender at Atlanta provided a tragic wake-up call about pit road safety. During a late race caution with just 30 laps to go, a routine pit stop turned deadly chaos. Mike Rich, a 32-year-old rear tire changer for Bill Elliott's Melling racing team, was kneeling next to Elliott's car, dutifully loosening lug nuts. Suddenly, behind him, Ricky Rudd barreled into the pits too fast and lost control. Rudd's Chevy locked its rear brakes, spun sideways, and slammed into Elliott's parked car at full tilt. The impact violently knocked Elliott's jackman and front tire changer off their feet, but unseen on TV at first was Mike Rich pinned underneath Rudd's car, crushed between two 3,500-pound stock cars. Crew members from multiple teams sprinted over, frantically lifting Rudd's car to pull Rich out. Pandemonium erupted in the pits. Longtime NASCAR physician Dr. Jerry Punch was on the scene and later described it as one of the most horrific injuries he'd witnessed on pit road. Rich had sustained massive trauma. He was rushed to the infield care center and then airlifted out. In the garage, Elliott's crew wept and Rudd sat on pit wall in shock. The race finished under a cloud as news spread that Rich died in surgery a few hours later due to cardiac arrest from his injuries. It was the first pit crew fatality in the Cup Series since the 1960s, and it shook everyone who works over the wall to their core. Ironically, Mike Rich had only gotten the job that year after the previous tire changer was injured in another pit accident. A cruel twist of fate. 1991. J.D. McDuffie's death at Watkins Glen prompts track changes. Veteran driver J.D. McDuffie was a beloved NASCAR underdog, a true independent who made more than 600 starts without a single win, yet earned lasting respect for his grit and perseverance. On August 11, 1991, in the Budweiser at the Glen, McDuffie's career and life came to a sudden and violent end on just the 5th lap. Charging into the high-speed Turn 5 loop at Watkins Glen, McDuffie's number 70 Pontiac suffered a catastrophic mechanical failure when a front wheel hub broke. Losing both braking and steering, his car shot straight off course at near top speed and slammed nose first into a tire barrier with devastating force. The impact flipped the car upside down, burying it in the barrier. Fellow driver Jimmy Means also crashed while trying to avoid him, but it was instantly clear McDuffie's situation was far worse. Rescuers rushed to the scene, but the 52-year-old was already gone, killed on impact from massive head and neck injuries. The race was red flagged as officials carefully extracted his body from the mangled blue Pontiac. In the garage, drivers and crews stood in stunned silence. McDuffie had been a fixture in the garage for decades, admired for running a shoestring team with a friendly smile. His death, NASCAR's first fatality in nearly 3 years, resonated deeply. It was especially haunting because just weeks earlier, sports car driver Tommy Kendall had survived a similarly terrifying crash in the same corner. Watkins Glen officials quickly realized changes had to be made. 1993. Alan Kulwicki, champion killed in a plane crash. Only months after celebrating his long-sought championship, NASCAR's reigning Cup title holder, Alan Kulwicki, was lost in a heartbreaking off-track tragedy. On a foggy Thursday evening in April 1993, Kulwicki boarded a private Merlin twin-prop plane bound for Bristol Motor Speedway. At 38, he was the sport's Cinderella story, a college-educated underdog who had defied the odds to win the 1992 championship through sheer grit and determination. Around 9 p.m. on April 1st, the unthinkable happened. Kulwicki's plane never made it to Tri-Cities Regional Airport. It crashed into a hillside just short of the runway, killing all 4 on board. Among the dead were Kulwicki, his close friend, and pilot Charlie Campbell, as well as 2 Hooters executives who were traveling with them. The news hit NASCAR like a thunderclap. Their defending champion was gone, not in a crash on the track, but in an instant in the darkness of rural Tennessee. By race morning at Bristol, the garage was in shock. The Speedway honored him with a moving gesture. Crews performed Kulwicki's trademark, the Polish victory lap, the reverse direction cooldown lap he had popularized. Rusty Wallace went on to win the race, then carried a Kulwicki flag on his own lap of honor, tears in his eyes. Investigators later determined the likely cause. The pilot had failed to activate the de-icing system, and ice buildup caused both engines to lose power. The finding only deepened the pain. Such a preventable mistake had claimed such a precious life. Fans, family, and his team were left devastated, turning his race shop into a memorial filled with flowers, flags, and notes of remembrance. 1993. Davey Allison's helicopter crash. A star gone too soon. The summer of 1993 brought NASCAR another devastating tragedy with the loss of Davey Allison, a 32-year-old superstar and heir to a legendary racing family. On July 12th, Davey flew his newly purchased Hughes 500 helicopter to Talladega Superspeedway to watch a friend test a Busch Series car. Though licensed, he had only a month of experience flying this particular helicopter. Attempting to land in an infield parking lot, his approach went wrong. Allison tried to make a sharp turn to line up, but instead placed the helicopter into an uncontrollable hover. The chopper suddenly shot upward about 25 feet before plunging nose first into the ground, rolling violently onto its left side. On impact, Davey's head slammed against the cabin with brutal force. Rescue crews reached the scene within moments. His longtime rival and close friend, Red Farmer, riding with him, miraculously survived with broken ribs and a collarbone. Davey, however, suffered catastrophic injuries, a fractured skull, and massive internal trauma. He never regained consciousness and was airlifted to Birmingham. The following morning, July 13th, 1993, Davey Allison died in the hospital. NASCAR was left in shock. Allison had been the sport's golden boy, the son of Hall of Famer Bobby Allison, winner of the 1992 Daytona 500, and fresh off a victory at Richmond weeks earlier. His charisma and fearless driving had made him a fan favorite. Grief swept through the garage. Bobby Allison himself, recovering from a career-ending crash in 1988, now had to bury his son. Davey's funeral in Hewtown, Alabama, drew the entire NASCAR family. Drivers wore black ribbons, and teams carried memorial decals for months in his honor. This has been part 1 of the darkest moments in NASCAR history, from 1952 to 1993. Which of these early tragedies shocked you the most? Let me know down in the comments. Hit that like button if you learned something new, And don't forget to subscribe to the NASCAR Explainer. In Part 2, 1994 to 2011, we'll cover everything from Speed Week's '94 and Earnhardt's 2001 crash to the Brickyard tire fiasco, the Charlotte Bridge collapse, and even NASCAR's messiest criminal arrest scandal, Jeremy Mayfield's drug downfall. Make sure to turn on notifications so you don't miss it.